Alright, so today we're talking about topic 2, which is human impacts on ecosystems. And we're going to start by defining what a natural resource is. So a natural resource, these are the materials and products that are found in nature. So for example, the trees, the water, oil, and minerals. Those are some examples of natural resources. So the reading is what you guys were already working on, pages 18 to 25 in the textbook. All right, so just from the reading and the worksheet you guys were working on, just comparing the impacts of a human-built dam, shown on the left-hand side, versus a beaver dam on the right-hand side. All right, so just comparing these two dams, the one on the right is built by the beaver, much less impact on the ecosystem compared to the one on the left. It's much larger, it's built up higher. This will have a much higher impact on the ecosystem, affecting lots of different organisms that were living in this area before. So here we're comparing different pictures here, and how have human interactions with the environment changed over time? Let's resume the recording. All right, so what we can see here is here we have the teepees, very little impact on the environment or ecosystems. Then we have more settlements here. The more use of wood, we have some wood cabins. We also have some farming happening in this picture here. Next, we see extreme forestry, deforestation, probably for agricultural land, probably for lots of land for farming, or it could be for buildings or residential areas and so on. And then next here we see how animals are being kept now. Instead of on farms, we have them in these factory style settings. All right, next we're just going to compare needs versus wants. So how do wants of people conflict with the needs of wildlife? So some examples that were mentioned in the textbook, for example, visiting parks in the Rocky Mountains to camp or hike. Even though you're connecting with nature and so on, you're still having an effect on the wildlife there, whether it's animals or plants. Another example is monster greenhouses to have juicy red tomatoes year round. Is that a need or is that a want? Okay, so building these giant greenhouses so that we have juicy red tomatoes all year, that would be a want, right? And it's having an impact on the ecosystem because we're building these giant greenhouses on land which was previously there for other species and other organisms. We're going to talk about the DD pesticide a little bit more. This was a pesticide that was used in the 1950s. It had a huge impact on ecosystems and on wildlife. And another example is the disappearance of swift foxes. You probably read about that in the textbook as well. There was a huge decline of swift foxes because they were considered pests, so people were hunting them down. We are going to watch this quick video here on DDT. But lastly, before we watch the video, we're just going to talk about how increase in human population and so on, the effect it's had on the environment and ecosystems. So when one person cleared a plot of land to build a house 100 years ago, the impact on the ecosystem was minimal. But as more and more people move to an area, more land is being cleared and there's a greater demand for those natural resources. Next is if we talk about cars. If one person drives a car, the impact on the environment is not that great, but millions of people are driving cars. And the number of people and cars in the world is rising every day. So we have cars need roads, we need parking lots. So therefore there's more air pollution as well. And we're taking away more habitats to build these roads and parking lots. So as human population increases, more and more humans are going to have needs that must be met. but they're going to have a greater impact on the ecosystems around them. So we do have the same habitat needs as other living things, but unfortunately our needs are conflicting with the needs of other living things. So we'll pause here and watch a couple videos.
The year is 2100. Human population has reached 10 billion. As temperature rises and ice caps continue to melt, rising sea levels have caused huge swaths of land to be permanently underwater. Major cities such as London, New York and Mumbai no longer exist. Millions of people have had to leave their homes, city population have risen, and stepping outside means breathing in extremely polluted air and endangering your life. Once fertile farmland has become unworkable as soil turns into dust. The number of people not getting enough food increases, rivers and seas are polluted, the provision of clean water an ever-increasing problem. This sounds like the plot of a dystopian novel, but it could end up being real. Since the Industrial Revolution in the late 19th century, the human population has exploded and is now growing at an exponential rate with no signs of slowing down. More people demand more resources and create more pollution, an ever-increasing impact on Earth. Humans cause pollution by burning fossil fuels. We are reliant on them for transport and electricity generation. Burning fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas. Increased greenhouse gases cause an increase in average global temperatures, known as the greenhouse effect. This is linked to climate change. Some areas of the world are getting wetter and others hotter and drier, and these changes have an impact on ecosystems and biodiversity. If you want to learn more about biodiversity and why it matters, watch this video. For example, warmer weather in the Arctic and the subsequent melting of the sea ice has an effect on animals that are living there. The polar bear is no longer well adapted for living in its habitat and is an endangered species. Humans also require resources. Large areas of forest are cleared to make more room for agriculture or to mine minerals or for growing other resources like palm oil. The removal of trees is called deforestation and has an enormous impact on not only the local ecosystem but the entire planet. Ancient forests, such as rainforests, are unique ecosystems. They can support a high biodiversity and are home to species that can only live in that habitat. For example, in Borneo, rainforests are being cut down to make room for palm oil plantations. The species that live in the rainforests cannot survive in the plantations. They may not be able to find food or shelter, like orangutans, who are an endangered species. You can find out more about endangered species and how conservation is helping them by watching this video. Forests provide services to the planet. They are important in the water cycle, recycling fresh water across the globe. Trees are also able to take in and store carbon dioxide, which helps regulate the Earth's temperature. As well as burning fossil fuels and deforestation, humans also create lots of waste. Sewage, pesticides and fertilizers enter the water. They may contain toxic substances that can kill organisms and impact on whole food webs. Pesticides can accumulate in the tissues of organisms and stay in the environment for many years before being broken down. A combination of a growing population and a throwaway culture, we also have increasing demands for dirty, wasteful landfill. But let's end on a happier note. There is some hope. People are coming to realise the impact we are having on the environment, and governments are aiming to